The voicemail was 3 months old when I finally played it. I'd been avoiding my grandfather's phone messages since the funeral, couldn't bear hearing his voice when he wasn't coming back. But that Tuesday night, wine-drunk and scrolling through David's Instagram posts of his new mansion, my mansion, bought with my inheritance, I pressed play on the last message Grandpa left me. Tori, sweetheart." His voice cracked through the speaker, weaker than I remembered. "If they ever try to cheat you, remember what I taught you about building. Not every treasure is given. Some you take." My name is Tori, and that message changed everything. 3 months earlier, I'd sat in that stuffy law office watching my family carve up Grandpa's estate like a Thanksgiving turkey. The lawyer droned on about assets and distributions while my parents nodded along, David smirking beside them. "The house and primary accounts go to David, as the eldest male heir," the lawyer said, sliding papers across the mahogany table. "Tori receives the smaller property downtown and a modest trust fund." I stared at the numbers. David got the family construction business, the lake house, the investment portfolio, everything worth having. I got scraps. "This can't be right," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Dad cleared his throat. "Your grandfather believed in traditional values, Tori. David will carry on the family name." "But Grandpa always said, 'You'll understand when you're older,'" Mom interrupted, her voice gentle but final. "David has a family to think about, responsibilities." David leaned back in his chair, already calculating. "Don't worry, sis. I'll take good care of everything." The way he said, "everything," made my skin crawl. I signed the papers because I didn't know what else to do. 29 years old, and I felt like a child being patted on the head and dismissed. The lawyer barely looked at me as I scrawled my name, already moving on to the next item on his agenda. That night, David posted a photo on Instagram, him and his wife Sarah standing in front of a massive colonial mansion, keys dangling from his fingers. The caption read, "Dreams do come true. Thanks Grandpa for making this possible. Blessed, Shatranj, family first, new beginnings." 43 likes in the first hour. Mum and Dad both commented with heart emojis. I threw my phone across the room. But now, listening to Grandpa's voice in my empty apartment, something shifted. I played the message again, focusing on every word. "Not every treasure is given. Some you take." I grabbed my laptop and started digging. Property records, business filings, anything I could find about the estate. My best friend Amy had always said I was too trusting, too willing to believe people had my best interests at heart. She was a real estate attorney, sharp as a blade and twice as cutting when she needed to be. I called her at midnight. "Tori, what's wrong?" "I need you to look at something. My grandfather's will." "It's been 3 months. What's this about?" I told her about the voicemail, about the sick feeling in my stomach every time I thought about that day in the lawyer's office. How David had seemed so prepared, so confident, how my parents had barely looked at me. "Send me everything you have," Amy said. "Documents, recordings, anything." "I don't have recordings." "Then we'll get them. Discovery is a beautiful thing." The next morning, I drove to Grandpa's old house, David's house now. Sarah was loading boxes into a moving truck, upgrading to something even bigger across town. She waved when she saw me, all smiles and fake sympathy. "Tori, how are you holding up?" "Fine," I said. "Just wanted to see the old place one more time." I walked through the rooms where Grandpa had taught me to use power tools, where we'd planned renovation projects and talked about building something lasting. David had already stripped away most of the personal touches, replacing Grandpa's handmade furniture with generic showroom pieces. In the garage, I found Grandpa's toolbox. Sarah was throwing it in the donation pile. "Mind if I take this?" I asked. Of course. I'm sure he'd want you to have it. Inside the toolbox, underneath the hammers and measuring tape, I found a manila envelope with my name on it. My hands shook as I opened it. A copy of a will, different from the one I'd signed. This one was dated 2 weeks later, and it told a very different story. Amy's office smelled like coffee and determination. She spread the 2 wills across her desk like evidence at a crime scene, her reading glasses perched on her nose as she compared every line. Holy shit, Tori. What? What does it say? She looked up, eyes wide. Your grandfather amended his will 2 weeks before he died. This version, the one you found, splits everything 50-50 between you and David. My heart hammered against my ribs. But the lawyer read from the wrong will, or the right will, depending on how you look at it. Amy's voice turned sharp. Someone made sure you only saw the first draft. I sank into the chair across from her desk. David knew. David knew. Your parents knew. Hell, maybe even the lawyer knew. This is fraud, Tori. Straight up inheritance fraud. The room spun slightly. 3 months of feeling like an idiot, like I'd somehow deserved the scraps they threw me. 3 months of David's smug social media posts while I worked double shifts at the design firm just to pay rent. What do we do? Amy grinned, and it wasn't a nice expression. We file a contest, but first we gather evidence, bank records, communications, anything that shows they deliberately hid this from you. How long will that take? Months, maybe a year. These things move slowly. She leaned forward. But there's something else. Your grandfather was smart, Tori, really smart. Look at Clause 15. I squinted at the legal text. I don't understand half of this. He gave you easement rights. Basically, if David ever tries to develop or sell the property, you have legal claim to access and usage. It's like he knew David would try to cut you out. Grandpa always said David was too greedy for his own good. Well, your grandfather just proved it. But here's the kicker. Amy flipped to the property records on her computer. David's new mansion? It's built on land that was rezoned from agricultural to residential just last year. Guess who owns the adjacent lot that was supposed to be included in that rezoning? I have no idea. A shell company called Underwood Holdings. Want to guess who the beneficiary is? My mouth fell open. Me? You. Your grandfather bought it 6 months before he died and put it in trust for you. David has no idea it exists because it wasn't part of the main estate. I stared at the screen, at the property lines that showed a perfect rectangle of land right next to David's dream house. What does that mean? It means, my dear friend, that you own the lot next door to your brother's mansion, and thanks to the rezoning, you can build whatever the hell you want on it. That weekend, I drove out to see the land. It was a beautiful piece of property, slightly elevated, with mature oak trees, and a clear view of David's backyard. I could see him through his kitchen window, probably planning his next Instagram post. My phone buzzed. A text from Mum. David mentioned you stopped by the house. Hope you're doing well, sweetheart. Maybe we could have lunch soon. I deleted it without responding. Instead, I called the contractor Grandpa used to recommend, a guy named Mike who'd worked on half the custom homes in the area. Tori Underwood? Yeah, your grandfather mentioned you might call someday. Said you had good instincts for design. I want to build a house, something special. What kind of budget are we talking about? I looked at the trust fund statement Amy had helped me access. Turns out Grandpa had been more generous than anyone realized. Let's say money isn't the primary concern. Mike whistled. I like the sound of that. When do you want to start? How soon can you break ground? Permits will take a few weeks, but I can have plans drawn up by next Friday if you know what you want. I stared at David's house, at the way it sprawled across the landscape like it owned the world. I want something that makes a statement. What kind of statement? The kind that says I'm not going anywhere. That night, I sat in my tiny apartment sketching house plans on graph paper. Nothing too flashy, nothing that screamed revenge, just a beautiful, substantial home that happened to overlook my brother's backyard. My phone rang. Amy. I've been thinking about your situation, she said without preamble. We should move fast on the will contest, but quietly. Let David think he's won while we build our case. How quietly? Quietly enough that he doesn't see it coming until it's too late to stop it. I smiled, pencil still moving across the paper. I like the way you think. Oh, and Tori? I found something else in the property records. Something about water rights that's going to make David very, very unhappy. 1 year later, I stood on my new front porch watching David pace his driveway like a caged animal. The construction crew was packing up their tools, 12 months of careful planning finally complete. Ma'am? Mike wiped his hands on a rag, grinning. We're all finished here. Want to do a final walkthrough? In a minute. I couldn't take my eyes off David. He'd been watching the construction for months, asking the workers questions they'd been instructed not to answer. All he knew was that someone with serious money was building next door. The house was perfect. 3 stories of modern farmhouse elegance, with a wraparound porch and floor-to-ceiling windows that offered an unobstructed view of David's backyard. Every detail had been planned with surgical precision. The owner's really going to love this place, Mike said, following my gaze to David's house. Funny coincidence, building right next to your family? Hilarious, I said. The moving trucks arrived at dawn. I'd hired the most expensive company in the city, the kind that wrapped your furniture in white cloth and treated every box like it contained priceless art. David appeared at his kitchen window around 7, coffee mug in hand, watching the parade of movers. By noon, he was standing at the property line, trying to get a better look. Excuse me, he called to one of the movers. Do you know who bought this place? The guy shrugged. Lady paid cash. That's all I know. I watched from my new bedroom window as David's frustration mounted. He'd tried everything, checking public records that were mysteriously delayed, asking neighbors who genuinely didn't know, even calling the city planning office. But I'd been careful. Everything was buried in shell companies and trust funds that would take a forensic accountant to untangle. At 3 o'clock, I had the movers position my grandfather's old rocking chair on the front porch, facing David's house. Then I sat down with a glass of lemonade and waited. It didn't take long. David's front door slammed open, and he marched across both yards, his face red with anger and confusion. He stopped at the bottom of my porch steps, mouth opening and closing like a fish. Tori? Hello, David. I took a sip of lemonade. Beautiful day, isn't it? What the hell are you doing here? I live here now. Didn't you see the moving trucks? He stared at the house, at the pristine landscaping, at the 3-car garage that was bigger than my old apartment. Where did you get the money for this? I've been saving up. You know how it is. I smiled sweetly. Sometimes good things happen to people who wait. This is impossible. You work at a design firm. You drive a 10-year-old Honda. Drove. I bought a new car yesterday. It's in the garage if you want to see it. David's hands clenched into fists. You can't afford this. Nobody can afford this on your salary. You're right. Good thing I don't just have my salary anymore. What's that supposed to mean? I stood up, smoothing down my sundress. Would you like a tour? I think you'll find the view from the master bedroom particularly interesting. Tori, I'm serious. How did you pay for this house? The same way you paid for yours, David. Family money. His face went white. That's impossible. Grandpa left you practically nothing. Did he? I walked to the porch railing, looking out over both properties. You know, I've been thinking about what Grandpa used to say. about building things that last, about making sure the right people get what they deserve. You're scaring me. Am I? That's interesting. I turned back to him. I figured I should keep family close. You know how important family is. David backed away from the porch. This is insane. You're insane. I prefer determined, but we can agree to disagree. I raised my lemonade glass in a mock toast. Welcome to the neighborhood, brother. He stumbled back toward his house, pulling out his phone. Probably calling Mom and Dad, or maybe his lawyer. It didn't matter. By the time anyone figured out what was happening, it would be too late to stop it. I settled back into the rocking chair and pulled out my own phone. Amy answered on the first ring. How did he take it? About as well as you'd expect. He's definitely calling reinforcements. Good. Let them scramble. The will contest goes to court next month, and I've got 3 more surprises lined up. What kind of surprises? The kind that make grown men cry. Speaking of which, did you file the water rights claim? This morning. David's going to find out his irrigation system has been illegally tapping into your water supply for the past year. I watched David pace his kitchen, phone pressed to his ear, gesturing wildly at my house. Amy? Yeah? I think I'm going to like living here. The newspaper article hit the stands on a Tuesday morning. I was drinking coffee on my porch when my neighbor Mrs. Patterson walked over, paper clutched in her weathered hands. Honey, is this about you? The headline read, Local Woman Builds Dream Home Next to Brother Who Inherited Family Fortune. Below it, a photo of both houses side by side, mine clearly newer and more expensive looking. I skimmed the article. Some enterprising reporter had done their homework, digging into property records and interviewing neighbors. The story painted David as the golden child who'd inherited everything while his sister got nothing, until she mysteriously appeared next door with enough money to build a mansion. That's quite a story, Mrs. Patterson said, eyeing me carefully. Isn't it? I folded the paper and smiled. Would you like some coffee? By noon, my phone was buzzing constantly. Old friends, distant relatives, people I hadn't heard from in years, all suddenly very interested in my life. I ignored most of them, but I did answer when Amy called. Have you seen the news coverage? Hard to miss. Channel 7 just drove by for the 3rd time. This is perfect, Tori. Public pressure works in our favor for the will contest. I walked to my front window and peeked through the curtains. David's car was in his driveway, but I hadn't seen him outside all day. How's he handling it? According to my sources, not well. His wife is furious about the media attention. Apparently, she's getting nasty comments on her social media. Poor Sarah. You don't sound very sympathetic. I'm working on it. That afternoon, I made a decision that would become legendary in our neighborhood. I called a local sign company and placed a custom order. Rush delivery. The banner arrived at 4 o'clock, 20 feet wide, professional-grade vinyl in bold red letters. The installation crew helped me hang it from my second-floor balcony, perfectly positioned so anyone driving by could see it. Thanks for the motivation, it read, with a smaller line underneath. Sometimes, the best revenge is living well. Within an hour, cars were slowing down to read it. People were taking pictures. Someone had already posted it on the neighborhood Facebook group, with crying, laughing emojis. David's front door slammed open at 5:30. He stormed across the yard, pointing at the banner like it had personally insulted his mother. Take it down. I stepped onto the balcony above him. Take what down? That ridiculous sign. It's embarrassing. To who? To the family. To the neighborhood. People are driving by just to gawk. I know. Isn't it wonderful? I've never felt so popular. Tori, I'm serious. This has gone too far. I leaned against the balcony railing. Has it? Because from where I'm standing, this feels like it's just getting started. What do you want? Want? I don't want anything, David. I have everything I need right here. Money. You want money? Fine. I'll write you a check. For what? To make this stop. To make you go away. I laughed, the sound echoing across both yards. Go away? But I just got here, and I love my new house. Don't you love my new house? It's ridiculous. It's too big for one person. You're right. Maybe I should get a dog, or throw parties. Big ones, with live music. David's face turned purple. You can't do this. Do what? Live in my own house? Hang decorations on my own property? I'm pretty sure I can do whatever I want. This is harassment. This is Tuesday. He pulled out his phone and started dialing. I'm calling the police. You should definitely do that. I'm sure they'll be very interested in a man who's upset about his neighbor's home decorating choices. While David ranted into his phone, a car pulled up. A woman in her 50s climbed out, looking official and slightly amused. Excuse me, she called up to me. I'm looking for Tori. That's me. I'm Poppy Rose. I was your grandfather's estate executor. Could we talk privately? David stopped mid-sentence, phone still pressed to his ear. His face went from purple to grey in about 3 seconds. Of course, I said. David, this is private family business. You should probably head home. I'm not going anywhere. Poppy looked between us, then smiled. Actually, Mr. David, you might want to sit down for this conversation. What I have to discuss concerns both of you. What kind of concerns? David's voice cracked slightly. The kind that involve missing documents and incomplete estate distributions. Poppy's smile widened. The kind that suggest your grandfather had a few more surprises up his sleeve. David sank onto my porch steps like his legs had given out. Should we go inside? Poppy asked. This might take a while. Poppy spread documents across my dining room table, while David sat frozen in the corner chair, looking like he'd seen a ghost. Your grandfather was very thorough, Poppy said, adjusting her reading glasses. He anticipated that certain family members might try to manipulate the inheritance process. What does that mean? David's voice was barely a whisper. It means he left instructions, very specific instructions about what to do if his final will was ignored or hidden. Poppy pulled out a thick folder. He also left additional assets that weren't included in the primary estate filing. I leaned forward. What kind of assets? Stock portfolios, business investments, and something he called insurance policies against family betrayal. She looked directly at David. He was particularly concerned about you, David. Said you had expensive tastes and flexible ethics. That's not true, isn't it? Poppy opened another folder. Because according to these bank records, you've been using estate funds for personal expenses. The boat, the country club membership, your wife's jewelry collection, all paid for with money that legally belongs to both you and Tori. David shot to his feet. You can't prove that. Actually, I can. Your grandfather had me monitor all estate accounts for the first year after his death. Every transaction is documented. Poppy's smile was razor sharp. Including the $50,000 you spent on that ridiculous sports car last month. This is harassment. I'm calling my lawyer. You should definitely do that, I said, echoing his words from earlier. I'm sure he'll be very interested in these documents. David stormed toward the door, then stopped. This isn't over, Tori. You're right. It's not. After he left, Poppy poured herself more coffee and settled back in her chair. Your grandfather would be proud of you. Would he? He always said you were the smart one, patient, strategic. She pulled out a business card. There's someone you should meet, a landscape architect who worked with your grandfather on some special projects. He might have information that would interest you. I took the card. Archer Bond? He's working on a property 2 streets over. Your grandfather trusted him completely. Why should I trust him? Because your grandfather left him something to give you, something David doesn't know about. The next morning, I found Archer Bond knee-deep in someone's garden renovation, dirt under his fingernails and sweat on his forehead despite the cool morning air. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe early 30s, with dark hair and the kind of tan that came from working outdoors. "You must be Tori," he said, standing up and wiping his hands on his jeans. "I've been expecting you." "Poppy said you knew my grandfather." "Knew him? He was my mentor, taught me everything about sustainable landscaping and property design." Archer gestured toward a bench under an oak tree. "We should talk." We sat down, and he pulled out a worn leather notebook. "Your grandfather hired me 3 years ago to design something special, a garden project on a piece of land he said would be important someday." "What kind of project?" "A memorial garden, but not the kind you're thinking." He flipped through pages of sketches and notes. He wanted it built on the lot next to David's house, said his granddaughter would need a place to think when the time came. My breath caught. He knew I'd build there? He knew a lot of things, including the fact that David would try to cheat you out of your inheritance. Archer closed the notebook. He also knew you'd fight back. What else did he tell you? That you were stronger than anyone realized. That you'd need allies when the time came to claim what was yours. He stood up, brushing dirt off his jeans. He left something for you, in the old garden shed behind his house. David's house now, is it? Archer smiled. Because according to the property surveys I helped your grandfather file, that shed sits on an easement that belongs to you. What's in the shed? Documents, deeds, stock certificates. His smile widened. Everything David thought he'd successfully hidden. That afternoon, I walked across David's perfectly manicured lawn to the small shed tucked behind his garage. The lock was old and rusty, but the key Archer had given me turned smoothly. Inside, covered by a dusty tarp, sat a metal filing cabinet. The top drawer was labeled, "For Tori, when she's ready." My hand shook as I opened it. Inside were property deeds for 3 lots in the downtown development district, stock certificates for Grandpa's construction company, and bank statements showing accounts I'd never known existed. At the bottom of the drawer, wrapped in tissue paper, was a brass key and a note in Grandpa's handwriting. "The real treasure was never the money, sweetheart. It was watching you become the woman who could take it back." I heard footsteps on the gravel behind me, David's voice sharp with panic. "What are you doing in there?" I turned around, arms full of documents, and smiled. "Taking inventory." David lunged forward, trying to grab the documents from my arms. "Those don't belong to you. Actually, they do." I stepped back, clutching the papers. "This shed sits on my easement. Everything in it belongs to me." "That's impossible." "Is it?" I pulled out my phone and speed-dialed Amy. "Hey, could you come over? David seems confused about property law again." "You can't just take things from my yard." "Your yard?" I laughed. "David, you might want to check those property surveys more carefully." His face cycled through confusion, anger, and something that looked like fear. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the fact that you've been living on borrowed time." I walked past him toward my house. Literally. 20 minutes later, Amy arrived with a briefcase and her game face on. She found us on my front porch, me organizing documents, David pacing like a caged animal. "What's the emergency?" she asked. "David seems to think I stole something that belongs to him." Amy looked at the papers spread across my porch table. "These are property deeds. And stock certificates. Where did you find these?" "In Grandpa's shed, the one that sits on my easement." "Your easement?" David's voice cracked. What easement? Amy pulled out her laptop and opened a file. The easement your grandfather filed 2 years before he died. It gives Tori legal access to a 10-foot strip of land that runs right through your property. That's impossible. It's public record, David. You would have known about it if you'd bothered to do a proper title search before you built your house. I watched the color drain from David's face. What does that mean? It means, Amy said, scrolling through legal documents, that your pool, your deck, and half your driveway are sitting on Tori's easement. Fix it, David said, pulling out his phone. I'll pay whatever it costs. Move the easement. You can't move an easement that's already been established and used, Amy explained. But you can negotiate with the easement holder. David turned to me, desperation creeping into his voice. What do you want? Want? I don't want anything from you, David. Money. You want money. Name your price. I don't need your money. I held up the stock certificates. Turns out I have plenty of my own. Amy whistled softly as she examined the documents. Tori, do you know what these are? Stock certificates? Controlling interest in Grandpa's construction company, the one that's been paying David's salary for the past year. David sat down heavily on my porch steps. This can't be happening. Oh, but it is. I smiled sweetly. And it gets better. Amy, what was that thing you found about the water rights? Right! Amy pulled out another folder. David, your irrigation system has been illegally tapping into the well on Tori's property. That's theft of water resources. I didn't know! Ignorance isn't a defense. You owe approximately $15,000 in usage fees, plus damages. David's phone rang. He answered it without looking at the caller ID. What? No, I can't talk right now. What do you mean, investigation? Who authorized that? He hung up, face pale. That was my accountant. Someone filed a complaint with the state about misappropriation of estate funds. Amy and I exchanged glances. That's terrible, I said. Who would do such a thing? You did this. I filed a legitimate complaint about inheritance fraud. It's called seeking justice. A car pulled into David's driveway. Mom and Dad climbed out, looking frazzled and embarrassed. They walked over slowly, like they were approaching a crime scene. Tori, sweetheart, Mom said carefully. We need to talk. About what? About this situation. With the house and the newspaper, and now the neighbors are all talking. Are they? How interesting. Dad cleared his throat. We think it would be best if everyone just calmed down, work things out privately. Privately? I stood up, gathering my documents. Like how you privately decided to hide Grandpa's real will from me? We don't know what you're talking about, Mom said, but her voice wavered. Don't you? Amy opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. Because I have copies of every email, every phone call, every meeting where you discussed keeping Tori in the dark about her inheritance. Dad's face went red. That's privileged information. Not when it involves fraud, Amy said calmly. Discovery is a beautiful thing. This is insane, David said, standing up. You're all insane, are we? I looked around at my family, at the fear in their eyes. Because, from where I'm standing, this is the first time things have made sense in years. A truck pulled up to the curb. Archer climbed out, carrying a large wrapped package. Sorry I'm late, he said, walking up to the porch. Traffic was terrible. Archer, meet my family. Family, this is Archer. He has something that belonged to Grandpa. Archer smiled and handed me the package. He said to give this to you when the wolves started circling. I unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a framed photo of Grandpa and me from when I was 12, working on a birdhouse in his garage. Below it, a brass plaque with an inscription, To build, don't beg. Take, then rise. David stared at the plaque, then at me, then at the documents scattered across my table. How long have you been planning this? I smiled. Since the day you stole my inheritance. But Grandpa, he's been planning this a lot longer than that. The garden party was Amy's idea, but I loved it immediately. Think about it, she said, pacing my living room while I signed the final documents that transferred control of Grandpa's construction company to me. You invite the whole neighborhood, make it elegant and classy, show everyone exactly who you are now. And David gets to watch from his kitchen window while his former life plays out in your backyard. I hired the best caterers in town, rented white tents and string lights, and sent engraved invitations to every house within a 3-block radius. The invitation was simple. Tori cordially invites you to celebrate new beginnings. The morning of the party, I stood in my kitchen watching David load boxes into his car. Sarah had left him 2 days earlier, taking the kids to her mother's house after the story hit the local news again. This time, the headline read, "Inheritance Fraud Investigation Leads to Criminal Charges." Nervous? Archer asked, coming up behind me with 2 cups of coffee. Should I be? Your brother looks like he's planning something desperate. I watched David slam his trunk shut and storm back into the house. Let him plan. What's the worst he can do now? Famous last words. The guests started arriving at 4. Mrs. Patterson brought her book club. The mayor showed up with his wife. Even some reporters came, though I'd asked them to keep it low-key. Poppy arrived fashionably late, wearing a stunning blue dress and carrying a bottle of champagne that probably cost more than most people's rent. How are you feeling? She asked, surveying the crowd on my back patio. Like I'm finally awake after a very long nap. Your grandfather would be so proud. Would he? Sometimes I wonder if he'd think I went too far. Poppy laughed. Honey, your grandfather spent 2 years setting up the dominoes. All you did was knock them over. Amy clinked her glass with a knife, calling for attention. The crowd quieted, faces turning toward us expectantly. I'd like to propose a toast, Amy said, raising her champagne, to Tori, who proved that sometimes the best revenge is living well, building better, and never, ever giving up. Hear, hear, someone called out. To the girl who built herself an empire one betrayal at a time, Poppy added, her voice carrying across the yard. The crowd raised their glasses, and I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Belonging. These people saw me, respected me, celebrated me, not because of who my family was, but because of who I'd become. That's when David's front door slammed open. He stumbled across his yard, still in pajama pants and a wrinkled t-shirt, clutching a beer bottle. The crowd fell silent as he approached the property line. Having a party? He slurred, swaying slightly. David, I kept my voice calm. You should go back inside. Should I? This is my neighborhood too, or it was before you destroyed everything. I didn't destroy anything. I just stopped letting you steal from me. Steal? He laughed bitterly. I'm your brother. Family takes care of family. You're right. Family should take care of family. Too bad you never learned that lesson. David's face twisted with rage. You think you're so smart, don't you? Think you've won? I don't think anything, David. I know. Well, here's something you don't know. He pulled out his phone, waving it at the crowd. I called the police. Told them you've been harassing me, trespassing on my property, stealing documents that belong to me. The crowd murmured nervously. I felt Archer step closer to me, protective. Did you? I smiled. That's interesting timing. What's that supposed to mean? It means the police are probably going to want to talk to you about those criminal charges that were filed this morning. David's face went white. What charges? Amy stepped forward, pulling out an official-looking document. Inheritance fraud, misappropriation of estate funds, and filing false legal documents. The DA's office issued a warrant about an hour ago. That's impossible, is it? I pulled out my own phone. Because I'm looking at the arrest warrant right now. David, you're officially a wanted man. The sound of sirens cut through the evening air. 2 police cars turned onto our street, red and blue lights flashing. David dropped his beer bottle, the glass shattering on the concrete. This isn't over, Tory. You're right, I said, watching the police cars pull into his driveway. It's not over. It's just beginning. The officers approached David with professional calm. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I could see David's shoulders slump in defeat as they explained his rights. Ladies and gentlemen, I announced to my guests, I think we're about to have some excitement. The crowd watched in fascination as David was handcuffed and led to the police car. Just before they put him in the back seat, he looked back at me one last time. I underestimated you, he called out. Yes, I replied. You did. As the police cars drove away, the party resumed with renewed energy. People were laughing, talking, celebrating not just my success, but the spectacle they'd just witnessed. Archer found me by the garden, where I was standing alone for the first time all evening. How does it feel? He asked. Like justice, I said. Finally. The autumn leaves were falling when I found myself back on the front porch, coffee in hand, watching the for sale sign sway in David's empty yard. The house had been on the market for 2 months now, the price dropping every few weeks as desperation set in. Archer pulled into my driveway, truck loaded with the last of the memorial garden supplies. We'd been working on Grandpa's garden design for weeks, transforming the space between our properties into something beautiful. How's it looking? I called out. See for yourself. I walked over to where he'd been working. The garden was stunning, native plants arranged in perfect harmony, stone pathways winding between raised beds, and in the center, a simple bench facing both houses. It's perfect. Your grandfather knew what he was doing, even drew up plans for the sight lines. Archer pointed to how the garden framed both properties. He wanted you to be able to sit here and see everything you'd built, and everything that fell apart. That too. My phone buzzed, Amy's name on the screen. David took the plea deal, she said without preamble. What kind of deal? 18 months, suspended sentence if he pays full restitution. He'll be on probation for 3 years. I sank onto the garden bench. So he's not going to prison? Probably not. But he has to pay back every penny he stole, plus interest and penalties. And he can never be involved in managing estate funds again. What about Mom and Dad? They're selling their house, moving to Florida to start fresh, according to your mother's Facebook post. Apparently, the shame was too much for the country club crowd. I looked across at David's empty house, then at my own beautiful home rising behind me. It's over. The legal part is, the rest is up to you. That evening, I was watering the new plants when a car pulled up. David climbed out slowly, looking older than his 33 years. He'd lost weight, and his clothes hung loose on his frame. Tory. David. I didn't stop watering. I heard about the plea deal. Yeah. He shoved his hands in his pockets. I came to... I don't know. Say something. Say what? That I'm sorry. That I was wrong. That I underestimated you so completely it destroyed my life. I set down the watering can and looked at him properly. Are you sorry? Or are you sorry you got caught? Both. Probably. He managed a weak smile. I keep thinking about when we were kids. You always said you wanted to build things, and I always said I wanted to own things. Turns out there's a difference. There is. I lost everything, Tory. My wife, my kids, my house, my reputation, everything. I know. Do you hate me? I considered the question seriously. No, I don't hate you, David. I pity you. That's worse. Is it? Because hate would mean you still mattered to me. Pity means I've moved on. He nodded slowly, like he'd expected that answer. The house sold. Finally. I know. I saw the moving trucks. The new owners seem nice. Young couple with kids. He looked around the garden, at my house, at the life I'd built. They asked about you. Said they were excited to have such a successful neighbor. That's nice of them. Tori, I need you to know something. Grandpa, he tried to tell me. About the will, about treating you fairly. I just didn't listen. I know. He said you were stronger than all of us combined. Said someday we'd realize it. David's voice cracked slightly. He was right. He usually was. I'm leaving town, starting over somewhere else. Thought you should know. Where will you go? Somewhere I can't hurt anyone else I'm supposed to love. I watched him walk back to his car, shoulders bent with the weight of his choices. At the last second, I called out, David? He turned back, hope flickering in his eyes. Don't contact me again. Don't call. Don't write. Don't show up. We're done. The hope died. I understand. Good luck. He drove away without another word. Archer found me in the garden an hour later, sitting on the bench in the gathering darkness. You okay? I'm free. I looked up at him. For the first time in my life, I'm completely free. What does that feel like? Like I can build anything I want now. He sat down beside me. What do you want to build? I looked at my house, at the garden, at the space where David's house used to loom over everything. Something that lasts, something real. Sounds like a good plan. I pulled out the brass plaque from the memorial package, the one with Grandpa's final message. In the moonlight, the words seemed to glow. To build, don't beg, take, then rise. You know what the best part is? I said. What's that? I didn't just take back what was mine. I became someone worthy of having it. Archer smiled. Your grandfather would be proud. He would be. And for the first time since he died, that's enough. I stood up, brushing dirt off my jeans, and walked back toward my house, my real house, built with my own hands, and my own money, and my own unbreakable will. Behind me, the garden rustled in the evening breeze, and somewhere in that sound, I could swear I heard Grandpa laughing.